Barry, what's your experience helping clients? How do we engineer cash flow in an intentional way, in the way that you help your clients?
Yeah, and it has to be intentional, right? There are people out there that might be land rich, dirt rich, but cash poor, or you could have a massive net worth, millions and millions of dollars in net worth, and no cash flow. And I love what Robert Kiyosaki talked about in his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. The focus was on cash flow. How can you generate cash flow? Because at the end of the day, you could have very low net worth and a massive amount of cash flow. I would prefer that situation with a lot of cash flow and not a lot of net worth necessarily. So businesses generate cash flow, or at least that should be the goal. Real estate properties can generate cash flow. Dividends from stocks can generate cash flow. There's multiple ways to generate cash flow. And we want people to think about what is best for their specific situation. Someone might be listening to the live video right now saying, I have no interest in real estate. I don't want to deal with tenants and trash and toilets and everything that comes along with real estate. I want more of a passive cash flow income stream, maybe dividends. There's other things you can do with trusted investing or real estate liens or gold and silver, whatever it might be. But cash flow is king, not necessarily massive amounts of net worth.
Yeah, I think you're making an important point with that. Having been in business for 20 years, both of us can speak to that. And it doesn't matter what you have for assets, if they're especially if they're illiquid, and then if you don't have the cash flow, then your hands are tied. So and I think you learn this. You may know this from a financial standpoint. If you haven't yet been in the trenches on your own business, you definitely learn it there, in terms of the uncertainty that can arise with cash flow sometimes, and then also just the pressing need that we always have to keep it rolling, right? So we want to engineer it. We want to figure out how to plan our business ventures, how to organize our real estate. We then look at the numbers, right? And we talk a lot about numbers on this channel. And so we want to engineer cash flow as best we can. Sometimes when you're in your own business, you can have cycles, right? You just have slower periods. If you're a landlord, if you are one of those people that likes renting to tenants, then you might have slow months, or a slow period where you're having a hard time getting your place rented. So it's going to affect cash flow. So and I can go on and on with examples of business owners that have had cash flow seasons that weren't as strong. Some more than others. And so, to me, one of the most important things is to try to figure out a fallback mechanism where you can create cash flow for yourself, even if your business cycle is down. And this always leads to the thing about taking advantage of opportunities as well. So if you have cash flow when other people don't, let's say there's a lull in the economy. Right now, we have a lot of activity over in the Middle East. So you have things tightening up to a certain degree there. So having a fallback, right? Having an engineered fallback to create cash flow is something that's really important. So maybe for
Yeah.
everybody listening, we should jump into the mechanics of it. And you help people a lot setting up this whole system to engineer cash flow. And I know people want to hear more about it.
Yeah, and it is engineered. I like the word that you used. You used intentional. I like deliberate, whether it's intentional or deliberate. You're making a choice to engineer cash flow for your life. Steve, you wrote a book called The Intentional Wealth Effect, right? We have to be intentional about these things. So yeah, read Steve's book, The Intentional Wealth Effect, that you have to do something about it. You've got to take action to engineer this cash flow. So we recommend an asset that's been around for almost 200 years. It's fully guaranteed. This asset provides you liquidity. It provides you tax-free use of your money. It provides you a buffer when the market might be down. It provides a buffer if you've got some slow months in your business and you need cash. A lot of benefits. And the asset is high cash value, whole life insurance. Those familiar with the I&E
Drum roll.
channel won't be
And
surprised by that. Yeah.
so before you guys jump off and say, oh, they're trying to do insurance, whatever, um, recognize that there's a certain kind of high cash value life insurance that you can stockpile safe capital in. And we talk about this as creating a system. And so, Barry, I know you're going to share some numbers, but when you fund a high cash value policy, you're basically creating a bank that, in a sense, you're creating your own banking system for a few reasons that we talk about all the time on the channel. The first way I know you always describe is you get guaranteed growth, you get tax-free growth pursuant to the tax code because of the life insurance laws that surround this kind of an asset. And the beauty of it is, so you get this guaranteed growth, and then dividends are reinvested into your policy bank, and that creates true compounding over time. So what that does is it builds momentum in your personal banking and basically in your personal finances. So you're creating a momentum machine, right? First, and so you're creating this momentum machine that you can then draw from later. And I know you're going to show us, like, when this machine matures a little bit, then the money that's accruing in there is going to be a powerful factor, and you're not even doing anything at that point. You're just accruing cash within your personal bank, and that's a cash flow system, right? And I know you're going to do some a little bit of demo around that for the folks watching.
Yeah. And for those watching or listening to the recording later, if you were mandated with this task to generate cash flow, what would you do? Most would probably go out and start a business, Steve, right? Others might say, you know what, I'm going to get into some alternative investments. Some might say, well, I'll go down the real estate path. Some say, I'll do some notes. You're going to do something and be deliberate about generating that cash flow. But here's my question: out of those things I mentioned and the 100 other things that you could think of, are any of those things guaranteed to generate cash flow? And the answer is no. So I hope your ears perk up here, because what I'm about to share is guaranteed cash flow. And that's what sets this asset apart from everything else we've talked about so far. You have a guaranteed asset in your portfolio that will generate cash flow. It'll generate tax-free use of money. It'll provide legacy planning to your beneficiaries. So here's the first example. Speaking of numbers, this is a 40-year-old female, and she's going to put set $25,000 a year aside for 20 years. That's it. Okay, so $500,000, and this is the illustration I'm looking at.
We can't screen share on these lives, so you got to spell it
Yeah.
out, right?
There's my screen share.
Thanks for sharing.
So at the age of 60, 20 years into this policy, there's $847,000 of cash value. She put in $500,000. Now, starting at age 61, 21 years in, Steve, she's done funding. She's not putting in any more money. But check this out. This is cash flow engineering. The next year, that 847,000 of cash value grows to 895,000 in cash value. She did nothing, and her cash value grew $48,000.
Right.
The following year, she does nothing again, and the 895 grows to 946,000. That's over $50,000 of gain.
50,000.
And 50 grand. And Steve, every year, this cash flow engineering tool that we're talking about, it gets larger. So $50,000 gain. Next year, $53,000 gain. Next year, 56, 59, 63, 66, 70, 73,000. So every year, you're seeing this bump up: 60 grand, 70 grand, 80 grand, 90 grand, 100 grand. If she lives to age 87, right, healthy female lives to 87, 3.5 million in cash value, she put in 500,000.
Hmm.
That's cash flow engineering. That's taking a portion of your portfolio, being deliberate and intentional about creating wealth and engineering cash flow in a system, right? This is a system that is going
Hmm.
to provide you guarantees, tax-free use of money, death benefit, right? Permanent protection, etc. By the way, she only paid for a couple 100,000 of death benefit. At the age of 87, there's 4.1 million of death benefit. And
Uh-huh.
again, she only put in 500,000. And we're going to look at
Yep.
a second example here in a minute. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's remarkable when someone's saying, okay, I want cash flow. What can I do? Or let's say you have cash flow right now. You've got a great business. You're a great real estate investor. You're doing notes and stocks. You're making money even in your own job. You're like, hey, I'm sitting on a bunch of cash. What do I do? Move some of it to this asset because of all the benefits you get. And the numbers clearly speak for themselves. You put in a
Yeah.
500,000 over 20 years, bunch of cash and a bunch of death benefit.
Yep. And so this thing is gaining momentum. And that was after those examples, just to repeat, is that was after she had stopped paying. And so that
Yeah.
cash flow was happening on an autopilot at that point. And some people might be listening, I really hope so. There might be some market people listening saying, oh, well, I can do that in the markets, and I mean, that's common. We hear that. And the thing to make a point about with that is that, yes, you could have that 57,000 in one year, and then it might go to negative 60,000 the next year, right? And then it has to work its way out of a trough. So the beauty of this kind of system is a couple things, right? You're talking intentionality once again. So that by contract, which I like as an estate planning attorney, I like the contract thing and the certainty around this because there's nothing else that is. If you really look at what everything else that people do with money, even real estate, you don't really have that certainty. So there's nothing. I would make a case that there's literally nothing else that you can do where you can have this kind of um, growth and advantage happening and have certainty with it. It's just not. So this is why the ultimate asset is named the way that it is. Number one. Number two. I mean, so you're being intentional. You know what you have this intentionality. Number two is there's this mental factor. If you're running a business and doing all these things, there's a stability factor that's going on there too. You're engineering cash flow by design. You're intentional, but you're also not worrying about it. So if you think about it from a mental, probably a psychological standpoint, you're not bifurcating your brain to have to sit and focus on the markets all the time when you're trying to run your business and do things. So from a wealth coaching standpoint, that's another important point that I like to think about and tell people about. People don't like to think about peace. I'm not sure why, but a lot of people like to think about the adrenaline that they get from watching the markets. I think, but this is just a very solid um, way to intentionally engineer cash flow. So, but I
Yeah.
want to hear your other examples. So I don't want to talk away the whole
Yeah.
time.
I want to address the email that was sent out to everybody. That in the email we talked about, most agents aren't going to show you the numbers after 20 years. And frankly, that's because they're selling usually the wrong type of life insurance policy. Could be a universal life policy, a variable universal life policy, where the cost of the insurance 20, 25, 30 years in start eroding the cash value. So we only use whole life insurance for this particular structure. This system is whole life insurance because there's no increase in insurance costs. So if you got an IUL or a VUL, some form of universal life insurance, and you look at the illustration and you see your cash values going down instead of going up on a compound growth curve that we just talked about, it's because the insurance company is charging you more money for the death benefit. And your agent doesn't want to explain that to you. One, because they may not know, or two, if they do, you probably won't buy the policy from them. So you've got to look at that. This intentional wealth creation, engineering, being deliberate about these things, you got to be in the right product if it's going to turn out correctly. And what we're
Yeah.
saying is properly structured whole life cash value, it always turns out right because it's a fully guaranteed product.
Right, assuming it's properly designed, because
Yeah.
if you in your company, your choice of company matters as much as your choice of product. And we know, Barry, having been in the industry, that there are companies that illustrate well to their, or they compare well in reality to their illustrations, and then there are companies that maybe don't do as well. And so we are prioritizing all the time, choosing companies that tend to mesh with what they're illustrating. We don't want to have, we're sleep at night people. You and I talk about that a lot. And so choice of company. So if you're just talking to your run of the mill agent and they're showing you an illustration, it doesn't mean a whole lot if it's not backed by a company that's solid, that has performance that tends to match what it's illustrating. And also, frankly, knowing how to design the policy for maximum cash value, if that's what you're driving at, which oftentimes people are. So just having all those factors coming together, I think, is really important in designing this system for people.
Yep, I agree. So here's our second engineering cash flow model. This is a Mel, age 40 again, gonna fund for 20 years, same 25 grand, but there's one difference. He's going to lump sum an additional 125,000 into the policy in the first year. So year one, 150,000 goes in. Year two, 25,000. Well, that 150,000 that goes in the beginning, it turbocharges the cash value. In our prior example, at the age of 60, there was 847,000 in cash. In this example, because of that extra 125, there's $1,084,000 in cash, and he would have put in 625,000. Well, every year thereafter grows again, compound interest.
Yeah.
61, 1.13 million. Age 62, 1.19 million. Age 63, 1.25 million. Age 64, 1.31 million. And Steve, those numbers just keep going up. No more money going in. I want people to understand that what Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, others out there that are saying about whole life isn't true. They're telling people absolute lies about whole life insurance, which is so frustrating to us that have been in the industry actually selling policies. Has Dave himself personally ever sold a term insurance policy or a whole life policy or a universal life policy? No.
Maybe, but
He
well,
refers it out, right?
yeah.
Like him personally, he doesn't actually sell the policies yet.
Right,
He
right.
claims to be the expert. No, he's not an expert. He's a financial entertainer. And so when he talks about whole life and saying, hey, you're not going to get the cash value, you're going to get a level death benefit, what we're talking about is increasing cash value, increasing death benefit. It's an asset that you can use throughout your life. Age 87,
Yeah.
3.68 million, and only 625,000 went into the policy.
Yeah. So I
Remind
I I enjoy, Dave is a good entertainer. I mean, let's face it, he's got that deadpan thing, he rips into people. I enjoy his take on bad debt. It's solid, But the last time I watched him on Whole Life, he said something like, it's so dead gum confusing. And he kind of lost me on that one. He lost my respect a little bit. I mean, dad gum confusing. I think you can figure it out. Dave, you built a multi-million dollar, actually, it might be multiple hundreds of millions at this point. I don't know. So yeah, I think he's playing dumb on it. He could probably figure it out if he wanted to, but he's got some interests that are otherwise, that he's got an opinion that's entrenched about it. So, but I want to ask you, Barry. So I want to segue for a second. Is you're talking about growing the cash flow account, and that's important. And you're talking about how it kind of gets its own momentum and picks up steam and starts making more than you're not even putting into it anymore, which is something that again, the entertainers and whatnot don't talk about. That's a pretty powerful thing. But now let's talk about the cash flow. Let's talk about policy loans for a second. Now, when you're taking that cash flow, there's some real strong advantages, right? If you take it out in certain ways, you get more advantage, more benefits. People take money out for different reasons, investments, tax-free retirement income, so on and so forth. So give us some insight from your experience on policy loans and how they kind of
Yeah,
work for people.
I've done many. My clients have done many. When you take a policy loan, you're leveraging against the cash value. So let's say you've got $250,000 in your cash value and you want to take a $100,000 loan. The insurance company is going to charge you a little bit of interest, usually between 5 and 6.5%, but they don't physically remove the money from the cash value.
Wait a
And
minute.
they
Wait,
don't,
you mean we're
yeah,
not borrowing our own money, Barry? Didn't
that's right.
didn't
That's
Dave
right.
actually say that? I think he said you're borrowing your own money. He kind of had it all like Southern accent going with that and everything, and it's not happening, right?
It's just not true. Yeah, it's not true. You're not borrowing your own money. The insurance
Okay.
company is giving you a loan from their general account. And the reason we know you're not borrowing your own money is because your cash value doesn't deplete. You're still
Well, and it's
earning
much like
interest and dividends.
and it's right, and it's much like borrowing against a piece of real estate that Dave would know about. Granted, he might not ever do that. I don't know if he uses cash for absolutely everything, but it's very similar in that way, in that you're using leverage. It's better, actually. I know you're going to get into that. So,
Yeah, the fact that you can take a loan, no questions asked, invest in your business, invest in an alternative investment, invest in crypto, invest in stocks, invest in real estate, whatever you want to invest in, the insurance company doesn't care. But now you're making money in two places at the same time because you're still earning that interest and dividends on your total cash value, and you're making money, hopefully, in the investment that you put that money into. The other thing I like is you get to pay the loan back however you want. Now, something fun happened just yesterday. My son and his wife, they wanted a new car and they decided to use the family bank. I have a policy on my son. Said, okay, we're going to get a policy loan and you're going to pay the loan back. He didn't have to go to the bank, didn't have to deal with an application, a credit check, and
mm,
30 or 45 days of waiting. We used the family bank for them to buy that car, and he's going to pay the loan back however he wants. But I'm teaching my kids how to perpetuate the family wealth. Be honest bankers, pay the loans back because then there's going to be more money for you in the future. That's a
mm.
powerful strategy because although the car, right, it's a depreciating asset, we're still earning interest and dividends on the total cash value, even though we're taking a loan for their car. Pretty
Right. So a
fun.
couple things. So a couple that is fun, and a couple things on that. He probably got a better deal on the car because he's able to say, "Well, we're just going to bring cash." I mean, right there,
Yeah.
he probably did really well on that negotiation. And then the other piece is that he can pay back. I don't know if you did in your case because he's your son, but he can pay back interest, right? Like he would pay to a regular car loan and thereby kind of add some value to the policy in doing that. Let's say you helped a third party do that. Maybe you gave him the dad, special deal there, but you could charge extra interest, I suppose, for something like that and
Yeah.
have it go back into your policy. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I was on a call with a client this morning and I made it very clear. He's looking at doing $100,000 a year for a few years and then just dropping down to 7 to 10,000 a year thereafter. And I said to him, remember, this money you're not locking up. You don't have to worry about it. You've got access to 95% of your cash value. Don't be thinking about the policy as a cost. This engineering cash flow conversation that we're having, we're talking about building an asset. You're not locking up your money. If you put that money, 100 grand a year, into a qualified account, whatever it might be, you can't get the money till you're 59 and a half unless you want to pay penalties and pay, the tax, etc. This money is liquid, and it's an asset that allows you to leverage against it throughout your life. And imagine doing this not just once or twice. Imagine continuing using the policy in this circular way, right? Money in, money out, money in, money out, and now you're perpetuating wealth. That's
Yep.
cash flow engineering.
Right. And a lot of this is because it's a tax-free bucket, and you and I go into the different buckets a lot. And look at what the conventional talking heads are telling you all to do with your money. You get a 401k, defer all the taxes on it so that it's a taxable bucket. Not only that, but it's locked up. So unlike the scenario that you just mentioned to your client, this is a 401k, and it would be the opposite, right? It'd be locked up. It'd have a bunch of red tape around it, which I know very well, having been in the estate planning world. If you try to take money out, you're going to get taxed on it. Number one, you're going to get a penalty on it. Number two, it's a real pain, and there might be a few isolated circumstances where you can take it out with a little less hassle, but that's not cash flow engineering. That's a highly regulated situation where you go into retirement and you have laws all around it telling you when you have to take it out, and it's basically when you do, you're going to be taxed on it, even if it pushes you into a higher tax bracket. So it's the opposite. So my case here is that the conventional is the opposite of cash flow engineering. It's actually creating rigidity down the road in your cash, and it creates tax complications when you finally take it out.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this and you're skeptical of what we're talking about, like, what does Stephen Barry know? They just want to sell me a whole life policy. They want me to get into real estate. They're telling me to take risky investments in alternative investments in crypto. No, we're not telling you that. But if you're thinking skeptically, it's because you're following that conventional wisdom. The conventional teaching, the conventional financial advice out there is keep your money locked up till you're almost 60, put it in the market. It's a volatile system. And the reason that conventional thinking is so popular is because that's what you hear when you turn on the television. That's what you hear when you turn on the radio. It's these powerhouse companies: Charles Schwab, Merrill Lynch, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Edward Jones. They want your money in the market, everyone, because they're earning millions and millions of dollars of fees off your money every year. Even if your portfolio loses 20%, guess what? They get paid. So if you're skeptical, think to yourself, well, am I thinking conventional thinking? And if you are, go through a paradigm shift, because what we're talking about, I'm 25 years in this industry. I've seen a lot of investment opportunity, and I've never seen anything better than high cash value whole life insurance. That is why Steve Gibbs here calls it and
Yes,
trademarked
the ultimate
the
asset.
ultimate asset. Yeah.
And that's why we segued from the trust and estate planning world and into this specifically to make this knowledge available to the masses. So look into it. If this sounds weird or whatever, don't dismiss it as a sales pitch. Look at the other videos on our channel and ask yourself why we're doing what we're doing. Barry started out. You started out in traditional financial. You could have pushed stocks or done anything like that, and you ended up in this arena and you're doing a very specific thing with these designs to even reduce your commission and stuff. So it's because of the nature of these designs. If you put more cash into them to hold the cash in there, you're actually reducing commission. That's another thing that Dave actually, I think, forgot to mention pretty much all the time. I don't think he's ever mentioned it. So so I want to encourage you all, look at this. And we don't tell people never invest in the markets. We're not saying that. What we're saying is have a component. Take a portion of your cash flow and build some certainty, build some cash flow engineering, and do it with intention. Barry, any other
Love
closing
it,
remarks?
Steve. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, what
brother.
a great way to wrap up. we are being deliberate about helping people. We're being deliberate about the truth around money. Uh, the education out there around money is so flawed, and it's so
Yeah.
one-sided. Uh, be in control. This asset gives you control. It gives you guarantees, right? Think about what's in your portfolio today that's guaranteed. We're encouraging you, as always, look at your own numbers and have the asset in your portfolio that's guaranteed to make money every year, that's
Yeah.
liquid, that's tax free, and it's a phenomenal engineering tool for cash flow, just like we talked about these illustrations that I went through today. You stop
Yeah.
funding and your
Yeah.
cash is growing 50, 60, 70, 80,000 a year. Who doesn't want that? Pretty
Yeah.
remarkable.
I agree. That was a good screen share that you did. So,
Yeah,
um,
thank you.
with with that, guys, thanks for joining us on this live. Appreciate you all jumping in, and we're going to try to do these regularly as we can. Probably around the same time Thursday afternoons. And with that, check out our other videos and subscribe. Of course, we want you to become part of the community. Barry, thank you as always, and we'll see you guys in the next live or in the next video.